Roy tells him that since the demon lord is already defeated, they don't need a grand magician like him on the front lines anymore. Bluntly, Rio says Abel should realize this. There is no need for his amber eyes now that the world is at peace. The eyes in question widen as its owner reflects that he knows it clearly. Demons have amber eyes, so it is no surprise that his eye color faces persecution. Roy tells Abel he has already prepared a mansion for him, but the magician does not care and swears he will never appear before the team again. Alarmed, Rio calls Abel's name, apologizing for hurting him. Entering a cave, Abel reflects that it is not Roy's fault, nor anyone else's. It is because their world is ignorant and immature. As he stares at a coffin in front of him, his resolve hardens and he opens the lid. When he wakes up, he realizes he must have slept for too long as his body hurts. He pushes the lid open and light filters through the cracks as it breaks open. Abel thinks that if all went well, he should be 200 years into the future. He exclaims when he sees his small hands. A younger-looking Abel says he had succeeded before smiling victoriously as he has just completed a reincarnation spell that none could recreate. 200 years have passed since the defeat of the demon lord, and the world has progressed. Abel thinks the world should now be ready to accept his amber eyes. Clenching his hand, he recalls the saying that eyes show your true power better than words can. While looking for a mirror, he remembers his current body was created based on his childhood self. He spent much time conducting experiments to create the perfect body. Though he retains his looks, he figures no one should recognize him anymore, so it does not matter. He whips his head around when he hears a noise. Someone is approaching, and he determines it is a woman. Feeling alarmed, he thinks there's not much he can do in a child's body, so he decides to attack first. But when he sees the woman, she seems to recognize him, and his first thought is that she is beautiful. The basket she is carrying falls to the ground as she collapses with tears in her eyes. Abel blushes, though he remains confused. The woman apologizes for her tears, saying she has been waiting for him for so long. Abel does not remember anyone as beautiful as her, but the longer he stares at her, she reminds him of a kid he met before. A memory stirs in his head. 200 years ago, he stopped a demon child from being killed. She is the demon lord's daughter. Abel does not know whether he felt pity for her because she was young, or because she had amber eyes like him, or perhaps he merely acted on a whim. Whatever the reason, he now recalls her name. He calls her Lilith, saying it has been a while. The demon is happy to see that Abel has not changed, though she comments that he got a little younger in the past 200 years. She reveals that she wanted to repay him, so she searched for Abel for 100 years until she finally found him. Curiously, the newly awoken magician notices that Lilith's eyes are blue instead of the same amber color as his. He is confused because one's eye color represents one's soul, and that should not change even after reincarnating. Lilith confirms that her eyes are still amber. She is just wearing contact lenses. She adds that once you get used to them, they do not feel uncomfortable anymore. Abel is stunned that such a small thing can change the color of your eyes. He laughs in amusement, musing that he was right to take the risk and reincarnate 200 years into the future. He thinks that the evolution of mankind is amazing. Throughout history, discrimination and persecution due to eye color have been aplenty, so it is quite ironic that a small piece of half-transparent sheet is what solves the reason behind age-old conflicts. After Lilith invites him to her house, Abel muses that he is also interested in her story, as well as all the new creations of the modern world. When she wraps a long piece of cloth around his neck, he becomes curious. She explains it as a scarf, a variant of the shawl they used to wear. Lilith offers her hand, and though he is not a kid, Abel takes it. Together, they both head out of the cave. He takes his first glimpse of the world outside. It is snowing, and there is a village nearby. Lilith says they should go, and Abel is instantly reminded what it is like stepping on snow. With his gait becoming confident, Abel looks around him, taking in the world that is 200 years later. And thus, the story of the strongest reincarnator begins. After a short stroll through the village, Lilith announces that they have arrived. Abel takes a good look at her home, commenting that it looks a little simple compared to the mansion next to it. However, Lilith has only been thinking of him, saying she predicted that he would like to avoid unnecessary attention. He silently agrees, especially since he can't even exert 3/10 of his power from before, so it's best to seem innocuous until he starts growing. When Lilith turns on the lights, Abel is surprised as he didn't feel that she used any magic. Curious, he asks about it. She explains that light bulbs are what is being used for lighting in that era. She demonstrates how to use the switch, commenting that it's a brilliant invention. Abel thinks that the light bulbs must have magic stones inside them, which produce light. He comments that though it's a wonderful invention, it's still more convenient for him to use his own power. Lilith chuckles, saying that's just like him, which makes the magician wonder what she meant by that. He reflects that using luminescent magic to create light is the simplest and most basic magic one can learn. It makes him wonder why people waste so much effort to create an unnecessary thing like a light bulb. He wonders why no one questions it. At that time, he still didn't fully understand the real meaning of Lilith's words. As he continues living with her, he spends most of his time in the study. After much reading, he's left in a state of disbelief. He realizes that the level of magicians in that world has decreased significantly. It's like the world has gone through a recession. The books he's reading either contain useless ramblings or simply erroneous information, making him sigh heavily in disappointment. Though he understands that the content and quality of the books changed and deteriorated after many restorations, the current standard is just too awful. Though culture has evolved greatly, spells which one could perform easily are now becoming automatic. Just then, he feels tired, making him realize that his childlike body still can't stay up late. Earlier, Lilith had asked him why he chose to be in a child's body. He replied that though there were many risks, there were also some advantages. In that world, there were 3 peaks a person could reach: the academic, the physical, and the magical peak. He still had a lot to learn about the new things in that world. Moreover, he wanted to start his new life in a different world as a child. Then Abel's eyes widened. Outside the study is a tray of food with a note saying that Lilith has gone to work and will return in the evening. Taking the cover off, Abel muses that she's quite considerate. As he munches on some sandwiches, he thinks about her words. He figures Lilith must have some kind of livelihood and wonders what it might be. Letting out a large yawn, he resolves to stop reading for a moment so he can sleep, not knowing that a child is about to disrupt his plans. When the front door opens, Abel is instantly alert. Someone has just arrived, and it couldn't be Lilith. Loud steps can be heard in the hallway until the door to the study slams open. A boy boisterously greets him, loudly assuming he must be Lilith's little brother, which the magician knows is not true. He figures the boy must be Lilith's acquaintance, and judging from his appearance, he must be some rich kid, probably the son of the owner of the mansion next door. The boy, whose name is Ted, tells Abel that he should be happy since he has become his junior. Abel immediately decides to ignore him, which frustrates the kid who keeps saying Abel's name wrong. Obnoxiously, Ted insists that Abel should be his junior, as it means becoming like brothers. However, the recently reincarnated magician is not interested at all. Feeling fed up, Abel decides to scare the kid away. With a menacing aura, he tells Ted to stop trying to get involved with him, stressing that he has amber eyes, which takes the other boy aback. When Ted's voice starts to wobble, Abel thinks that his efforts have worked. It's no surprise, as after all, these amber eyes symbolize evil in that world. Feeling quite satisfied, Abel decides to scare the kid a little more, but then Ted laughs, making Abel confused. Ted outright exclaims that Abel really does have amber eyes. It's his first time seeing someone with those. Totally confused by the kid's reaction, the reincarnated magician wonders what the hell is happening. Ted collapses on the floor laughing, saying it's his first time seeing amber eyes. Meanwhile, Abel stares at him, wondering how things turned out like this. Just then, he notices someone arrive, who immediately yells at Ted. It's an older boy with blonde hair, and he proceeds to scold the obnoxious kid about coming into Lilith's house. Judging from their interaction, Abel figures that the two must be brothers. Ted points at Abel, saying it's his first time seeing someone with chicken eyes. Scowling at the kid, Abel can't believe he wasted his time arguing with him. The one he should pay attention to is the older brother, whose name is apparently Bass. He looks 2 to 3 years older than Ted and Abel, but the reincarnated magician isn't fazed at all. Bass turns his attention to Abel, saying that he heard Lilith's little talented brother would come and stay with her, but then he sighs in disappointment, saying his expectations must have been too high. Stunned, the magician falls silent, staring at the brothers who are less than impressed by him. He had been so confident that they too would view his amber eyes as a symbol of evil. Then a realization dawns on him. He asks the brothers if amber eyes are only considered useless in that world. Abel and Bass are shocked before the younger sibling guffaws, telling his older brother that the commoner doesn't even know. Abel flinches again at the wrong pronunciation of his name, but he stays silent as Ted explains that his chicken-like eye color doesn't match any of the elements, meaning the bearer of such eyes can't perform magic, and thus are considered ordinary eyes. Bass reprimands his brother, saying he's gone too far. However, Abel is not that surprised. Magicians with amber eyes have to go through 10 years of training, or else all of the elements will remain blocked and inaccessible. Bass turns to the magician, mistakenly calling him Abashi. After Abel corrects the blonde, the latter apologizes for his brother's disrespectfulness, but Abel says it's not a big deal. Bass tells Ted to apologize, and since his brother is being stubborn, the blonde tells him he shouldn't be like that, as even without magic, Abel can still live a peaceful life. Abel now realizes that Bast too thinks he's a fool with amber eyes, which the Reincarnator resents. Soon Bast urges his brother to leave with him, smugly saying they still need to learn magic. Finally alone, Abel wonders what's up with these two, bursting into someone's house like it's theirs and then talking badly about him. Deciding to learn more about the world, he reads a book about war history. Settling in for the long read, Abel discovers that in the past 100 years, there have been no wars between humans and demons, and because of that, everyone is no longer afraid of evil demons' eyes. While people with different eye colors can easily use their elements to create magic, those with amber eyes seem to spend a lot of time practicing to create magic and are thus considered useless and become the target of contempt. Pondering for a bit, he muses that he doesn't really like to use things like eye contacts, but he understands why Lilith uses them. Smiling ruefully, he muses that it's not easy to have a normal life as someone with amber eyes. Later, Abel is still reading when Lilith returns home. Upon seeing her outfit, he questions if she works as a maid. Lilith says yes and asks him what he thinks about her look. Abel blushes behind his book and says it suits her, making the woman chuckle in amusement. She's about to go and make dinner when Abel stops her, saying he understands why she chose to hide her eye color. The atmosphere becomes somber, but Abel still says that he had mistakenly thought that she didn't want others to know that she was a demon. Lilith says that after 200 years, demons almost certainly no longer exist. Abel, who led the heroes to defeat the Demon King, made it all possible. The reincarnated magician knows what happens next. The humans made sure to get rid of all demons. As peace was brought back to their world, the power of magicians got weaker and weaker, and so the fear of amber eyes disappeared. There is no longer a purpose in training to become stronger. Lilith confirms that everything he just said is correct. While she prepares dinner, the room becomes silent before Abel addresses the demon again. He asks if she hates him and all the other humans. Lilith doesn't respond immediately, giving Abel time to recall that it was his team that heralded the end of the demons, and he was the one who defeated the Demon King, Lilith's own father. The woman replies that, though there are times when she felt so desperate that she wanted to cry, she always remembers that it was Abel who risked his life to save her. He even found her a place to live safely. He had taught her magic and how humans work, amongst other useful things. Abel knows that she's not answering the question, but Lilith replies that every woman has her secrets. Looking a bit concerned, he wonders what she had gone through all these years while he was gone. She then approaches him, revealing that she was always grateful for everything that he had done for her. In front of her sweet smile, the magician doesn't know how to react, but eventually he says thank you while blushing once again behind his book, making Lilith giggle once more. Later, Abel finds himself in an unexpected situation. He's currently taking a bath with Lilith. She had forced him to join her, practically half abducting him. Seeing that he isn't comfortable, she apologizes, saying she couldn't hold back her love for him. Abel comments that she has a strange way of expressing her love. He huffs, saying there's an implication of a man and a woman being alone in the bath. The demon looks stunned before she smiles, saying that his statement is rather interesting and not at all persuasive, given his prepubescent body. She leans toward him, exposing her figure. He curses silently. While Abel is in a child's body, Lilith has grown up quite splendidly. 200 years ago, he was in his late 30s, while she was barely 5 years old. She then grabs his shoulders, saying she's quite happy as Abel is finally becoming aware of her as a woman, and hugs him. Abel looks away before breaking away from her hug. He says that no matter what it is, his fundamental principle is never to cower in self-denial, which makes the woman smile, as she knows it clearly. Later that night, Lilith is sleeping on the same bed as Abel. After having spent night with her, he realizes that in his previous life, he had no experience with women and wasn't interested in anything other than becoming stronger. After looking at her, he drapes a blanket over her body, wondering if this is what it means to be happy. He has a feeling that he will be able to sleep more soundly that night than usual. In the following days, Abel is once again in the study reading. He reflects that he has been spending his days in comfort, without being caught up in any big incidents. He eats with Lilith, studies, has lunch and rests, and then studies again. However, there is just one unavoidable event during the afternoon. Right on the dot, Ted shows up, already giggling obnoxiously. He announces his arrival, calling Abel his buddy. The magician is getting tired of dealing with a child every day. He knows that Ted is just a carefree noble desperate for a playmate his age, but enough is enough. As Abel whispers an incantation to strengthen his legs, he muses that he has no obligation to play with Ted. In the blink of an eye, he passes by the kid and reaches the window. Much to the other boy's surprise, Ted hurriedly informs him that they're on the second floor of the building. Abel only apologizes before making a great leap out of the window. He practically soars through the sky before landing on the roof of the next house. Ted is shocked, while Abel tells him that he doesn't have time to be bothered by a child. The kid demands to know how he did that, but Abel only ignores him, musing that he's getting somewhat used to being in a child's body. Ted curses and recklessly decides to do what Abel did. He jumps from the window, and Abel is pleasantly surprised to discover that the kid can use physical strengthening magic too. However, he's doing it all wrong, wasting too much magic. Just then, Ted's jump falters midair, and he starts falling. He lands, screaming, on top of some bushes. Abel goes to check on him, not surprised by what just happened. He asks the kid if he's okay, but Ted just jumps right to his feet, totally frustrated at Abel. He tries tackling the Reincarnator, but Abel jumps right over him, making him land on his face. The kid starts throwing tantrums on the ground. Taking pity on the boy, Abel decides to comfort him by saying not to worry about it. Ted will be able to use the spell properly after training for about another 20 years. His words have the opposite effect, annoying Ted even more, as Abel is supposed to be his underling. Getting an idea, Abel tells the kid that he will be his underling, which makes the boy excited. However, there is one condition. If Ted is able to take his muffler away from him by sundown, only then will he be his underling. Inwardly, Abel thinks that if Ted is going to keep disturbing him anyway, he might as well use him as a practice partner to make it worth his while. He wants to determine how talented the magicians of the current era are. Ted believes it's going to be an easy victory for him, and of course, Abel isn't worried at all. He only jumps away with Ted scrambling after him. Ted yells for Abel to wait, but the latter doesn't listen. He runs while reading his book. Glancing behind him, the magician thinks the kid should realize by now how inept his body's strengthening magic is. In fact, Ted hardly used any magic while chasing him. Despite all that, it seems the kid has decent stamina. Ted wonders why Abel is so calm, but of course the magician is not about to reveal that his training method is different from a normal human's. Even 200 years ago, no one could keep up with him when he was serious. Only the hero of wind, Roa, was able to put up a good fight. Hearing heavy breaths coming from the kid, Abel turns around to see him wobbling on his feet. He asks the boy if he wants to give up, but the kid just tries to tackle him, only to be swiftly dodged by Abel. Feeling like he can't move anymore, Ted gives up for now but tells Abel he'll remember this, judging from how long Ted has been chasing him. Abel muses that at least the kid has been doing basic fitness training regularly. Just as he's thinking of returning to the house, he spots two familiar figures through a window. It's Lilith and Baze, making him wonder what they're talking about, so he uses his magic to enhance his hearing. It turns out Lilith is saying she can't have a relationship with Bass. Abel is not at all surprised that the teen is developing feelings for a beautiful woman like Lilith. Frustrated, the blonde asks what she doesn't like about him. Abel guesses it must be his attitude, but Lilith replies there's nothing wrong with Bass, it's just that she already has someone in her heart. Bass is shocked and asks if she was talking about Abel. Calmly, she says yes and tells him to give up. Surprised and flustered, Bass can't believe she's in love with her own blood-related brother, saying she disgusts him. He walks away, saying she should be ashamed of herself. In the distance, Abel reflects that he's not at all Lilith's brother, but it would be easier for them if Bass believes that. Though he feels sorry for the guy, the magician decides to pretend he didn't see anything. Since it's about time Ted can move his body again, the boy launches a surprise attack, which Abel once again easily dodges, causing Ted to fall on his back. Once again, he throws a tantrum, before suddenly feeling quite sick. He faints, and Abel figures the boy must have run out of magic. All that chasing was too much for Ted's body, but with this, he should learn he has no chance of winning against him and stop coming the next day. However, a few days later, the two of them find themselves on the roof once again, with Ted still determined to make Abel his disciple. The Reincarnator hits him with a book, saying he should try to stop announcing his moves. Ted swears he almost got the other boy on that attack. Unfortunately for Abel, it seems their game of chase has become routine, but at least the boy calls him now with his proper name. Ted laughs boisterously, saying of course he would remember after all the days they've spent playing together. Besides, Abel is going to be his future underling too. In the last few days, Ted seems to have improved in his abilities, as body-strengthening magic seems to be a good match for him. Aiming for Abel's muffler, Ted once again launches an attack, and this time Abel chooses to block his punch. The magician suddenly disappears before reappearing to knock Ted off his feet, who then lands on his back once again. Abel comments he's too slow, taunting the kid that even a fly could stop that attack. He questions Ted if he's going to give up. The other boy curses as he stands. Unexpectedly, his foot slips, and Ted falls off the roof before Abel's child body can react. The magician is alarmed and immediately jumps off the roof, cursing when he sees that Ted fell on the pavement. While the injured kid is crying, Abel lands perfectly, and it seems like Ted also landed on his feet but broke his leg. Abel thinks it's going to be fine, as fixing a fracture is quite easy for him. He's about to use his magic when Bass appears. He pushes Abel away, telling his brother that he's going to use recovery magic. Bass' hands hover above Ted's injury, while Abel observes, wondering if Bass can use healing magic when he has green eyes, meaning his element is wind. A minute later, Abel asks Bass what he is doing. The wind magician is stunned, asking Abel if he's never seen recovery magic before. The noble tells him to keep quiet so he can concentrate, but Abel thinks the situation is bad. Recovery magic is very delicate, like building blocks, but Bass completely lacks finesse. At this rate, Ted's nervous system might get worn out. The injured boy screams, but his older brother tells him to endure. Then Ted faints. Abel comments that Bass should take his brother to a medical office quickly, but Bass has other plans. He confronts Abel, saying he saw what he did, and reveals he witnessed Abel sweeping Ted's leg earlier. Abel tries to explain what happened, but when Bass hears him call Ted by his name, the green-eyed boy snaps, saying Abel should address his brother as Master Ted. He yells that Abel is just a commoner, while Ted is the second son of the Langobard family. Abel is unfazed, saying that such matters aren't important right now. They need to get Ted to a medical office. His words infuriate Bass, who then calls Abel an inferior-eyed bumpkin, swearing that he'll make him regret acting rudely towards nobles. Abel doesn't react, while Bass, believing that Abel has sullied the honor of the nobles, pulls his sword, declaring he won't be lenient toward an insolent fellow like Abel. He challenges the Reincarnator to a duel. Abel doesn't immediately react. He looks around, musing that things are becoming complicated. He tells Bass to wait, explaining that he doesn't have a reason to fight him. The green-eyed boy accuses him of making a fool out of a noble. Abel realizes he's just making Bass angrier. Since he needs to treat Ted's injury quickly, he decides to accept the duel and finish it fast. Calmly, Abel accepts the duel, wondering what kind of magic the nobles use in that era. He thinks they shouldn't use too much flashy magic to avoid drawing attention. After stating the rules, Bass offers to impose a handicap on himself, but Abel tells him there's no need. Getting angrier, the wind magician feels completely insulted. With vengeance in his eyes, Bass casts the first attack. Abel quickly turns around, seeing Bass perform a wind effigy. Abel dodges and notes that although the power is mediocre, Bass's conjuration speed is too fast. Observing his opponent, he realizes it must have something to do with the sword Bass is using. Noticing Abel looking at his weapon, the wind magician assumes this is his first time seeing a regalia. When Abel doesn't respond, Bass assumes his enemy is rendered silent by ignorance. He explains that the sword is a support item created by magic. Thanks to it, he is overwhelmingly fast at conjuring magic. Still, Abel manages to avoid every attack. As he dodges, he uses magic to analyze the sword, curious if the source of magic is advanced. He deduces that its mechanism allows activation of simple magic just by pouring one's own magic power into it. Abel stares at the magic attacks before slicing one in half, much to Bass's surprise. While Bass is baffled, Abel feels satisfied as he solves the mystery of Bass's conjuration speed. He reflects that the appearance of these tools lowered the overall level of magicians. Because of its convenience, all magicians must have started using it, especially since having a regalia means one doesn't have to build their own source of magic. In that peaceful world, such toys must be quite popular and have robbed magicians of their thinking minds. Abel expresses his disappointment, saying Bass's attacks feel like flying balloons. The wind magician gets angry again and starts attacking recklessly. Thankful that he had learned something during the fight, Abel decides to show Bass what true undiluted magic is like and releases his version of wind effigy. The attack heads straight at Bass, who doesn't react fast enough. The blonde is sent flying back, landing harshly on the ground. Though Abel used flashy effects in his attack, he lowered its power considerably. Abel asks Bass if he feels like giving up yet, which makes the boy clench his teeth in anger. Bass says it's unfair that a kid with inferior eyes is this powerful. Suddenly, someone shows up in front of him. Lilith knees him in the stomach. The force of it is so strong that the boy is sent rolling a good distance away. Totally confused, Abel asks Lilith what she's doing, and she replies she's just taking care of the garbage that was rolling nearby. The Reincarnator points out that it's problematic since she's working as a housemaid at Bass's house. The boy thinks the same, but Lilith only glares at him, saying she will not forgive him if he continues to insult Abel, her menacing aura scaring the boy. Abel tells her to forgive Bass and Lilith obliges, though begrudgingly. Bass's face seems to scream why he needs to be forgiven when he's a noble, but he doesn't say the words, perhaps sensing that Lilith would probably kill him immediately. He keeps his mouth shut, Tears well up in the noble's eyes before proceeding to scream in frustration. An hour later, a doctor tells Ted it will take 6 months for him to heal, so he should be patient. Abel, who's eavesdropping nearby, thinks that the healing period is too long and concludes that the level of medical magicians has also fallen. Just then, Ted hears a creak. Abel has just entered the room through the window, asking Ted how his injury is. The kid tries to play it off, saying it's just a scratch, but then he faints from the pain. Abel says he won't wait 6 months and starts using his recovery magic on the boy's injury. Feeling satisfied with his work, the magician says he's just doing this because he doesn't want to lose his daily sparring partner. He wants Ted to heal as soon as possible to keep the boy working for him. He apologizes for his selfish reasons, but unfortunately he's already very short on time. The next morning, Bass' father, Evans, forces his son to apologize to Abel. The reincarnator is a bit confused while the two are kneeling before him. Bass looks upset. He can't see why he's apologizing to a commoner who's also the younger brother of their housemaid. Evans hits him on the head, calling him an idiot. He tells his son that they are not hiring Lilith, but rather she is hiring them. Bass looks utterly confused, while Abel now understands. He had always wondered why a high-class demon like Lilith was serving humans. She must be taking advantage of their noble status to live with humans, making Abel wonder what Lilith has on them. Abel tells them to raise their heads since he's not angry in the first place. Evans is relieved, thanking Abel profusely, while his son is still totally confused. Later in their mansion, Evans is approached in his office by Bass, who asks his father to get rid of both Abel and Lilith. Evans bluntly refuses, explaining that their village is currently flourishing thanks to Lilith's advice. Their maid is, in fact, their benefactor, so he can never ignore her opinions. Bass insists that they don't need her at all to run their territory, but Evans continues to dismiss his son. Just then, someone arrives. It's Ted, who asks why they're arguing. Bass is surprised, as he heard that it would take 6 months for Ted to walk again, but his younger brother tells him that he's completely healed. Turning toward their father, Bass asks why they need to bow their heads and pay respect to Lilith, but Evans doesn't answer, determined to only tell the truth to them someday. Seeing his son's expectant faces, he only tells them that he can't tell them right now. Feeling very frustrated, Bass decides to leave the matter alone but demands that his father send him to the Arsulia Magic Academy, much to Evans' surprise. Arsulia Magic Academy is a prestigious school that has trained many elite magicians. Evans refuses, saying Bass is to remain at home and study as the heir. However, the boy is adamant about learning more powerful magic. Evans listens as his son expresses his desire to become stronger so he can cut down his enemies. He is determined to wield the most fearsome magic and become the strongest magician whom no one will be able to defeat. Ted tells his brother that he doesn't have to think like that. The older brother snaps at Ted for being an embarrassment to nobles, pushing him away. Their father restrains Bass, but the boy continues to blame Ted for getting chummy with commoners despite his nobility. Inwardly, Evans thinks that he cannot entrust the Lord's title to Bass in his current state and lets go of his son. He agrees on sending Bass to the academy so he can gain experience. Pleased, the boy then excuses himself. After he leaves, Evans wonders where he went wrong with the boy. When Ted expresses his concern over his older brother, his father observes that Ted remained calm despite his brother's outrage. Deeming Ted more mature than his older brother, Evans decides to tell him the truth. Lilith saved his life from a demon, and after that, she assisted him in numerous ways, being both a neighbor and a teacher. When he asked her why she was helping him, she answered that she wanted a safe place to live, in preparation for when an important person of hers wakes up. Back then, Evans didn't know what she meant, but now he understands the reason he was saved. It was all for when that boy arrives. Grabbing his son's shoulder, Evans instructs his son to get along with Lilith and her brother, but the boy says he doesn't have to tell him that, declaring that Abel is going to be his underling, or so he hopes. While he's telling his father that Abel is his important friend, on another side of the house, Bass has a completely different look on his face, fully consumed by his hate toward the same person. The next day, Ted shows up at Abel's study once again. The magician lightly scolds him, saying he should open the door to the study quietly. However, the kid is too excited to listen. Ted tells Abel to teach him the source of yesterday's magic. It's been a month since the accident happened, and before Abel knows it, Ted has started to regard him as his mentor. When Abel comments that Ted's leg is looking all right now, the boy confirms it healed naturally, and he boasts that the wound was nothing but a scratch to him. Abel says they should do something interesting then and dons his scarf. He invites Ted to once again play their game of tag. The boy is stunned before his face splits into a large smile. He exclaims he's going to beat Abel this time, to which the magician says it's fine to be confident as long as he uses the body-strengthening magic that he taught Ted yesterday, which the boy is all too willing to oblige. While on the road, Ted excitedly looks out the window of their carriage and announces that they've almost arrived. He comments that it's been a long ride. They spent almost half a day in the carriage already. Abel reflects that it's been 2 years since he woke up from his sleep. At the moment, they're on their way to the royal capital to take the entrance exam for the Ursulia Magic Academy. Some time ago, Lilith had asked Abel what he wanted to do in the future. He answered that he planned to travel around the country as an adventurer, but then she told him that all adventurer professions had been abolished 10 years ago. Abel wonders if it's because the number of monsters has dramatically decreased, making adventurers no longer needed. Lilith then informed him that if he wants a job related to magic, he is required to attend the Magic Academy. The Reincarnator couldn't believe it. 200 years ago, he was regarded as an unparalleled genius, and now he has to go to school again. Amused, Lilith asked if Abel planned to continue mooching off of her, leaving the magician with no choice. Presently, he thinks he can't depend on Lilith forever, and besides, he wants to expand his horizons. For the past 2 years, he's been informing himself about magic technology in various fields, and he concluded that tools like regalias are not the only reason behind the decline in the level of magicians. He thinks that at the moment, most talented magicians are focusing on regalia development. Instead of training, they focus on coming up with a regalia that anyone can easily use. Just then, Ted pulls him from his thoughts, thanking his mentor for teaching him magic. Abel thinks that the boy has grown up a lot. When he first met him, he was a total brat, but now his manners have improved considerably. He recalls how he had a lot of trouble teaching Ted, as the kid unfortunately isn't very bright. Finally, Ted announces they've arrived. They're currently at the front gates of Ursulia Magic Academy, which Abel silently acknowledges as quite splendid, as expected of the most famous school in the kingdom. Suddenly, students notice Abel and call out to him. They ask if he's the one rumored to have inferior eyes. The 2 students start mocking him, saying a commoner should just work on a farm somewhere. Abel reflects that along with the decline of modern magicians comes low-quality students. The 2 students keep talking about how Abel probably bribed someone and that he will fail the test anyway, which makes Ted mad. He tells them they shouldn't judge a person by the color of their eyes, surprising Abel as he never expected Ted to defend him. He reflects that in every era, there is always a bias against amber-eyed magicians. Just then, a girl arrives, calling out to the nobles and glaring fiercely at them. Abel takes note of her red eyes and the crest on her ribbon. The girl calls the nobles an absolute disgrace for spreading malicious gossip about a commoner who has just arrived. When one of the boys asks who she is, she introduces herself as Eliza. She declares that she's going to become a great female magician who will make history. The 2 older nobles tell her to watch her tone, even threatening to teach her some manners, which makes Ted nervous. He implores Abel to help her, but the latter tells him there's no need. He says the girl is obviously strong, and with a confident smile, she whips out her sword and quickly slashes, cutting off their ascots. She tells them to get out of her sight, and after she glares at them, the boys become scared and quickly scramble away. Abel is about to thank her, but she whacks his hand away. She calls him a lowly commoner, totally pissed off that he attempted to touch her. Abel is surprised as the girl had just helped him, but she says she only did that because she hates spineless guys. Flipping her hair, she tells him that if he wants her attention, he should be disciplined and strong. Eliza then walks away, while Ted asks what's her problem. Abel says he doesn't know, but something is bothering him. It feels like he has met that girl somewhere before. Later, the 2 boys take their entrance exams. It includes 2 types of tests, a writing test and a skill test. The writing test is too easy for Abel. He breezes through it while Ted increasingly becomes agitated before his brain seemingly overheats. One of the questions makes him pause. It asks him to prove that magic cannot create a human soul, the Deeperonic's final theorem. He muses that at last, a difficult question has popped up. Glancing to his left, he can tell this question is meant to prevent an examinee from getting a perfect score. Abel smirks, as the one who made the Deeperonic's final theorem is none other than him. It was 200 years ago when he was still a child, less than 10 years old. At that time, magicians were searching for a way to create a human soul, and a well-known magician claimed countless lives so he could attain the answer. To put a stop to all the killings, Abel published the theorem. Thanks to it, he was also able to complete his reincarnation spell. As for the term Deeperonic, it was the name of a dog kept by an elderly couple in his neighborhood. Presently, Abel thinks that the Deeperonic's final theorem is incomplete and quite useless. It makes him wonder if he should correct it right now. He can't help but be embarrassed by what his past child self published. After the written test, the students are all talking about how difficult it was, and even Ted was brought to tears. However, Abel could not relate to his suffering. A woman then comes in front of the examinees, saying she will now be guiding them to the skill testing ground in groups. Ted instantly perks up, claiming that the skill test is the real test. Outside, Ted exclaims that the grounds are large, while Abel observes that the area is good for testing ranged magic. The examiner announces that they will be using regalia for the practical test, so they are to pick one that matches the color of their eyes. Abel settles to use a regalia for red eyes, as there isn't one for amber eyes. Another examinee tells him not to just pick a random regalia, but Abel ignores him. The examiner then tells him to shoot towards a target with magic, saying they're impossible to break. Abel muses that the test requires a high amount of inborn magic power and the skill to release magic efficiently. When the examiner asks who wants to do the skill test first, Ted enthusiastically volunteers, making Abel wonder if he's going to be okay. Though he has been teaching Ted some magic, the boy is still only a half-decent magician. When the examiner signals the start of the test, Ted pulls his hand back and throws a fireball toward the target. Abel is surprised, as Ted's performance is quite terrible, especially since the kid used an unfamiliar regalia, so the outcome is pretty much expected. Still, Ted's fireball hits the target, which then absorbs it. Abel analyzes that they must be using dark matter ore inside the targets to make them pretty sturdy. To his surprise, the examiner is amazed by Ted's performance and even asks the boy why someone as talented as him is taking the general exams. Abel continues to be surprised when the other examinees around them express their disbelief at Ted's apparently great magic. Nearby, a veteran examiner states that they must be witnessing the birth of a genius magician born once every 100 years. Abel wonders if he's daydreaming as he watches the next examinees take their skill test. Seeing how they're all less than impressive, Abel can't believe that there are people who can't handle magic, even with regalia as support items. Then the examiner turns to Abel, seeing he's the last examinee to take the test. She questions if he's still interested in taking it. Noting that even the examiner is showing doubt in his capabilities, he says yes and ignores all the chatter around him. Since they didn't prohibit any modification on the source regalias, Abel proceeds to power up the sword he's holding. He then raises it, calls forth his magic, and sends a rain of fireballs toward his target. There's a large explosion, and the whole area fills with smoke. When it clears up, everyone around him is shocked, while Abel thinks that the Academy must have used inferior quality dark matter ore for the student exams. The noble examinees are losing their minds. Ted is enthusiastic, congratulating his mentor. Seeing that they're all in a state of shocked disbelief, Abel muses that at least he has corrected the misconception that amber-eyed magicians are useless. Meanwhile, in a different location, Eliza is observing her surroundings, thinking that the facilities of the prestigious Arcelia Magic Academy are top-notch. Nearby, she hears some boys talking about her. They're disgusted that she had protected a commoner, which only makes the girl annoyed, especially since they're not all that impressive. She's already predicting that less than half of them will be able to pass the exam. When her number is called, she steps forward. As she's asked to introduce herself, she politely bows to the examiner, leaving the woman and other examinees dazed by her beauty and elegance. She asks for permission to start the test, to which the examiner gives her the go-ahead. Pulling out her sword, she activates her magic and sends a flaming attack toward the target. There's a loud crash, leaving everyone dumbfounded. The dark matter ore inside the target is actually damaged. The examinees are confused as the regalia is said to have produced only fireballs, but she used another skill, Flame Edge. Hearing them wonder if Eliza didn't use her regalia, a nearby female teacher muses that she actually did. The girl turns toward the examiner and informs her that she just rewrote the source, as she could do more damage that way. Everyone is surprised that she could do that on the spot. The female teacher, whose name is Phedia, tells the examiner that it's no problem as rewriting the source is not prohibited, and they're only evaluating the power of the examinee's magic. Eliza observes Phedia, guessing that the woman is probably the one in charge of the exams. Just then, someone arrives in a hurry, reporting that they have an emergency. Phedia instructs the newcomer to speak clearly, and he reports that an amber-eyed student just melted the dark matter ore inside the targets with fire magic, even burning the perimeter too, which stuns Eliza. When Phedia asks the name of the examinee, the guy answers he's a commoner from the Langobard province, and his name is Abel. Eliza becomes even more surprised, remembering the amber-eyed commoner she met a while ago. She starts chuckling and exclaims that things are getting interesting. Later, Ted is pretty excited that the two of them are in the same class, while Abel laments that there's no classification above A. Just then, they arrive at the Class A waiting room, and upon opening the door, all the other examinees inside the room look at them warily, while some avoid meeting their gaze. Ted comments that perhaps the rumors of what happened during Abel's skill test are spreading. He muses that although it's going to be a little uncomfortable, It will be okay since there was no harm done. Just then, someone speaks to him. It's Eliza. She asks if she can sit next to him. Abel merely turns his head away with a sigh, which angers her. He reminds her of her earlier comment about how commoners shouldn't get too friendly with nobles. Eliza, irritated, admits it's a clever comeback. However, she wants to clarify something. She's not a stickler for the nobles' rules. She just doesn't like the weak. She then launches question after question regarding what he did during the skill test, causing Abel to think that she's quite the troublesome girl. He's saved from answering when the door opens. It's Fidia, who then reveals that she's in charge of the exam. Abel whispers to Eliza that their conversation will have to continue some other time, which the girl is forced to accept. She then states that she knows what's going to be the next test. Fidia announces that the final test is a skill test that simulates a duel. There are only 3 rules to be followed. First, the match is one-on-one. Second, the winner is the one who destroys their opponent's defense magic, which will be casted by the examiners. And finally, their opponents are the ones that the teachers have selected based on the previous tests. While Ted is relieved that his opponent isn't Abel, the latter notes that the one who's going to duel him is number 86. Eliza then speaks up, informing Abel that she's going to be his opponent. As she's smiling quite smugly, he now knows what she was talking about earlier. Fidia then announces that she'll be taking them to the final exam site. Minutes later, they're on the grounds once again, and after being granted the defense magic by the teachers, Abel predicts that it'll withstand a few blows from low-level magic, which should be quite enough for a fight between students. For the first match, both Eliza and Abel are called forward, which sparks chatter among the examinees about the two powerhouses. As he muses that their battle will probably attract the most attention during the test, Eliza turns toward him, excited to see what Abel is capable of. Eliza tells Abel to quickly pick his weapon, confident that she can beat him with her magic. She muses that she's too impatient. He then reveals to her that he doesn't use weapons. When she asks him why, he doesn't give her a straight answer, but inwardly he thinks it's because it's faster to build his own magic from scratch. He assures her that he will not disappoint her, which surprises the girl a bit with his confidence. Commenting that he must prefer the old way, she then launches an attack. Abel observes that she's quick, but he isn't worried at all. To his eyes, she might as well have been standing still. Eliza's sword merely meets air as her opponent seemingly teleports behind her. Frustrated, she casts a flame edge, which he easily dodges. Abel muses that her pace of relentless attacks must be excellent for a magician of that era, and for a moment he becomes distracted wondering if the academy also uses dark matter for the buildings. Greatly annoyed, she tells him to stop looking away, but merely dodging is getting boring for Abel. He casts his own version of Flame Edge, surprising his opponent so much that she isn't quick enough to dodge. There's a large explosion, forcing Ted and the others to cover their eyes. Wondering if he had gone too far, Abel is a bit surprised when he sees a figure emerge from the smoke. Eliza is once again launching an attack, letting out a battle cry. Even though she must have realized the difference in their levels, the girl shows no hesitation about attacking him, causing Abel to think that it's been a long time since he fought someone interesting. He apologizes before casting the skill, Burning Bullet. He knows the fight has ended, as once again, Eliza fails to dodge and suffers the full power of his attack. Then, Abel stares. His opponent is still standing, though looking very worn out and exhausted. Fidia announces the destruction of the defense magic on Eliza, signaling the end of the fight. A medic rushes toward the girl, but she refuses treatment. Seeing her fierce expression, the man is taken aback. She admits that she certainly lost the match, but they're still in the middle of a personal duel. Abel doesn't reply, thinking that the girl absolutely hates to lose. Picking up her sword, she declares that she's going to be stronger than everyone. Looking at her contemplatively, Abel asks why she needs to be the strongest when they're living in peaceful times. After a beat of silence, Eliza states that peace is just a make-believe word, considering that the neighboring kingdom, Kurdria, has been making preparations for war. There was even a recent incident involving demons that was kept secret to maintain peace. She states that there's no guarantee that war will not happen, or that the demon king won't be resurrected. Nothing is for certain, and that's why she absolutely refuses to be complacent. Abel silently agrees that if a war with demons were to happen again, humanity would be in trouble. Eliza then declares that she's going to become strong and rebuild the house that raised her. Hearing her words, Abel guesses that Eliza's family must have not been able to keep up with modern values, which led to their downfall. Unexpectedly, the girl starts casting forbidden magic, calling it Rose Madder Sky. With his analytical eyes, Abel determines that she's using a kind of body-strengthening magic with a complex magical formula. Somehow, it feels like he has seen this magic somewhere before. Eliza then casts Physical Flare, causing wings to emerge from her back. She flies into the sky, leaving everyone in awe, except for Abel, who does acknowledge that her armor of fire surpasses even his fire magic. Without a doubt, he now recognizes who originally owned that magic. The girl then addresses him, telling him to prepare himself as she's currently on a completely different level. While the other examinees are completely awed that flight magic actually exists, Eliza and Abel are completely absorbed in their duel. As flying magic requires the skill to handle multiple attributes of magic in a well-balanced manner, Abel deduces that Eliza must have trained hard. While she boasts about the amazing magic she had mastered, Abel doesn't react. He has already grown tired of seeing that kind of magic. He then casts a spell, which wraps around the girl. As he's quite familiar with Rose Madder Sky, he knows how to completely dispel it. While she's in midair, her wings disappear, and soon she starts to fall. The girl screams, completely helpless. Seeing that she can't help herself, Abel sighs and takes a great leap into the air. He catches her since she is a lady after all. The two are completely silent, with Eliza feeling very flustered. Then Abel asks her if she's a descendant of the hero of fire Maria. When she confirms his suspicions, he reflects that not only did she inherit her ancestors' magic, but also her personality. It was thanks to that he was able to cancel Eliza's magic immediately, which is a good thing too, as Rose Madder Sky burns one's own life force. He then comments that Eliza looks like the muscle-brawn girl that he used to know. While she's still looking pretty stupefied, Abel walks away, telling her to do her best. She stares at him, along with everyone else. Fedia, who recovers first, announces that Abel is the winner of the match. He merely ignores everyone, while the other examinees react in shock and admiration at his performance. Still on the ground, Eliza wonders who the hell Abel is. Inside the academy, a student comments that they have quite a lot of interesting talents that year. Someone says that they must be referring to the G3, or the Genius 3, which includes the three foreign students, Ted, Eliza, and Abel. The first student comments that's good news, as at the moment they are a bit concerned about the reputation of their school as the best magic academy. Somebody interjects, saying the whole G3 thing is nonsensical. The student turns to him, curious about what the teacher, Emerson, is about to say. The man states that the true genius is only Abel. The two students become silent, unsure of his conclusion, as Eliza is quite impressive as well. Glancing back at Abel's written test result, the man is still in disbelief that the boy had solved the Dipyronic's final theorem. He is wondering if they should make it public when someone behind him expresses his excitement regarding their first years as well. The man is the Arsulia Magic Academy's headmaster. Emerson raves that Abel is amazing, already predicting that the boy is going to be the best magician their country has ever seen. When the teacher mentions that Abel has amber eyes, the headmaster chokes on his spit, making Emerson concerned. Composing himself, the headmaster asks for the boy's name again. Emerson tells him the boy's name is Abel, who is a total genius, having achieved a perfect score in both his writing and practical tests. The headmaster's eyes widen, totally perturbed, but he acts like nothing is wrong. Later, the headmaster thinks that it must all just be a coincidence. Bringing a lantern with him, he descends a secluded set of stairs. Upon coming across a suit of armor, he presses on a secret button which opens the doors to a room. It's a study filled with books on every side. He heads to the desk and opens a drawer. He then takes out a letter and begins to read. It was written by the headmaster's ancestor, revealing a long-hidden truth. Contrary to popular belief, it wasn't the four great heroes who defeated the demon lord. It was Abel, a powerful amber-eyed magician. The ancestor, who turns out to be Roy, reminds his descendants to never overstep their limits. The headmaster recalls that a long time ago, his grandfather told him that the four great heroes had a fifth member named Abel, making him wonder if it's all a coincidence. Even though Abel is a great magician, it's impossible for him to have survived 200 years until now. The headmaster becomes pensive, not knowing what to do. He wonders whether the boy's ability is genuine or not. In a cafe, Abel enjoys his drink now that the entrance exams are finished. He muses that the beverage that was called Devil's Drink 200 years ago is now being called coffee and has become the world's most common drink. Then Ted's loud voice breaks the peaceful atmosphere. Abel lightly berates him, telling him to open doors more calmly. After giving a quick apology, Ted then presents him with a letter, proudly revealing that he had passed the entrance exams. Abel can't help but think that the kid is noisy as always. Ted then reveals that his mentor also received a letter. He asks if they should also check Abel's results, but the latter says there's no need, knowing he had already passed. He comments that Ted had probably opened his letter already, and most likely would not ask him that question if he hadn't failed. Bashful, Ted states that, as expected, his mentor saw right through him. Abel then addresses Ted, asking him who his guest is. The person in question quickly hides, while Ted looks like he has a hard time answering. Eventually, he reveals that he had noticed Eliza there a long time ago but doesn't have the heart to expose her terrible hiding skills. Finally, the girl steps out, pretending to have just noticed Abel there. She even claims it was a total coincidence bumping into him. To top it off, she lies about loving the shop's cupcakes, despite the fact Abel knows they don't sell any. He cuts straight to the point, asking what she really wants from him. Although Eliza is a descendant of his former comrade, Maria, if she turns out to be hostile, that's a whole different story. However, the girl only asks him what class he'll be in. Giving her an assessing look, he then questions what she means. When she tells him that she's just curious, Abel wonders what she can gain by knowing his class, since she doesn't seem to be lying, and Ted states that she'll find out anyway. Abel allows the kid to reveal that both of them are in Class A. The girl is ecstatic, and since she's satisfied, she moves to leave. But before that, she tells Abel that she's going to be the one who'll graduate at the top of their class. Exasperated, Abel wonders what the girl wants in the end. Meanwhile, Ted is totally amused, exclaiming that they're going to be busy from now on. He then tells Abel that he'll be staying at the student dormitory since it's a long commute from home. He wonders if Abel is going to be okay, since living in a dormitory will separate him from Lilith, but Abel believes that she has already prepared something in advance. Speaking of the demon, she tells Abel that he understands her very well. Ted is surprised, asking what she's doing there. When Abel questions what she's wearing, she pulls out a pair of glasses and dons them. She announces that she was just hired as a teacher at Ursulia Magic Academy. Ted is shocked, while Abel isn't surprised at all. The woman probably has a lot of connections and favors from influential people. She's claiming there was a vacant position, but he thinks she probably has some connection with the headmaster. Addressing Abel, she says she'll continue supporting him as a teacher at the academy. Abel smiles, appreciating how clever she is. Ted then asks his mentor to tutor him a bit before enrollment. Abel states that his practical test was awful, but Ted argues the examiner was impressed by him. With the other two around, Abel reflects that his days are bound to stay noisy. On the day of departure, Abel is staring through the windows thoughtfully when he hears somebody knocking. It's Lilith, who asks him if he's ready. He says yes, having already packed his luggage. When she asks him if he's feeling reluctant, Abel doesn't reply, though he admits to himself that he has grown attached to his home of 2 years. Lilith assures him that they'll be back again for summer vacation. Abel turns to look at her, only to see the woman smiling. After telling her that they should go, the two lock up the house and meet Ted, who's already waiting for them at the carriage. The boy excitedly reminds them that the entrance ceremony starts the day after tomorrow. As Abel settles in for the long ride, Ted exclaims that he'll be making a lot of friends. Later, Abel stirs awake and discovers that he's leaning against Lilith. When she asks if he slept well, he apologizes, but she tells him it's fine. She then takes in his scent, saying they will have fewer opportunities to meet each other in the near future. Gently pushing her away, he reminds her that no one should discover their relationship. Glancing at Ted, he decides that it's time to wake the boy up. Abel then lifts the silencing magic that he had cast, revealing that the boy had been loudly snoring all along. Initially, Abel tries to wake him up gently, but since his efforts are not working, he decides to use magic, hitting the boy with a minuscule fireball. Ted jolts up, screaming in pain. Abel then informs him that they're almost there and assures the kid that the fireball he just felt was just a dream. Lilith then calls Abel's attention, telling him that they have arrived at the student dormitories. The Reincarnator comments that it's quite big, while Lilith informs him that only first years use that building. She even adds that the dormitories also have laboratories and shops. Eventually, she excuses herself, since she still needs to introduce herself to the other teachers and submit a lesson plan. Abel expresses his understanding before Ted tells him that they should get going as well. Upon entering through the door, Abel senses magic that acts as a countermeasure for intruders. Fidia, who's in charge of the building for first years, greets them and hands them their academy uniforms. She sternly tells them that whenever they go out of the dorm, they have to wear it. Abel surveys the clothes and asks her if the uniforms are enchanted. Fidia informs them that enchantments of magic resistance and stain resistance have been applied to the clothes. Abel feels a bit agitated, as the enchantments are quite sloppy, but he can't tell that to Fidia. She then hands them their room keys and recommends using their free time until the ceremony tomorrow in the training gym. She laments that students are neglecting their physical training too much. Inside Abel's room, Ted comments that she's quite a strict teacher, adding that though she's beautiful, she's probably not that popular with the opposite sex. He also talks about how Abel's room is bigger than his, probably because the other boy got better grades. The Reincarnator then states that he wants to redo Ted's uniform's enchantments as well, which stuns the noble. Ted compliments him for being kind, but then he asks Abel what an enchantment is, making the genius magician wonder if the boy really did pass the entrance exams. Abel then asks Ted what the properties of each type of eyes are. Ted recites that red eyes are for fire, blue eyes are for water, green eyes are for wind, and gray eyes are for support. As he's unsure of the last one, Abel tells him that black eyes are for production, which means granting magic on objects to enhance them. Enchanted swords are sharper, while enchanted shields become even more durable. Doubting that the boy is really listening, Abel thinks that Ted will learn faster if he experiences it rather than having it explained. He then instructs the boy to wear the uniform. Ted marvels, exclaiming that his body instantly becomes lighter, but Abel tells him there's more to it than that. When Ted announces that he's going to offer steamed buns around, Abel is confused. Ted then shows him a paper bag filled with what he reveals is Langobard's territory special product, Snowball steamed buns. He then rushes out with his buns, intending to make friends. Abel sighs, thinking that the boy is as noisy as ever. However, he doesn't doubt that Ted will actually make 100 friends. Suddenly, he hears someone yelling. Peeking through his door, he wonders what's going on, and becomes alarmed at what he's seeing. Ted is being bullied by other nobles of their year. While a noble angrily accuses Ted of insulting them, Abel continues to observe. Ted explains that he just wants to make friends, but the other nobles only mock him and call Ted a stinky poison perch, which is an invasive type of fish. Ted still insists they try his buns, saying they are his hometown specialty. One noble smacks his hand away, causing some of the buns to tumble out of the paper bag. The boy then cruelly kicks away the steamed buns, making Ted tear up at their cruelty. Abel becomes concerned as he watches Ted despair over his steamed buns. He thinks that if he interferes, it will cause more trouble, but he can't just leave the situation alone. Eliza then appears, saying she'll have one of Ted's steamed buns. Abel is surprised as she bends down and picks up one of the buns. She takes a bite, shocking the bullies who are watching. They can't believe the girl just ate something that fell on the floor. She comments that she would have liked a little more local flavor in the buns, and her actions make Ted feel touched. One of the boys remarks on Eliza's ill manners, to which she sharply glares back, accusing them of being worse for kicking away food. Infuriated, the bullies start calling her a poison perch. Sensing the tension rising, Abel decides to step in. He gently grabs Eliza's shoulder, telling her to let him handle it. Her cheeks flush at his touch, while the bullies are momentarily thrown off. Then they burst into laughter, mocking Abel for daring to intervene. They can't believe someone with such inferior eyes even got into the academy. Abel realizes these must be elite students from the academy's prep school, and their nickname, Poison Perches, is meant to degrade those who entered by exam. Abel starts to say that Ted truly meant no offense, but then Ted suddenly snarls. He runs toward the leader of the bullies and butts his head, knocking the bully out. Abel and Eliza are shocked by what just happened. The other bullies are stunned that their leader isn't conscious anymore. While Abel notes that Ted's actions are quite surprising, the other bullies become angry and decide to attack Ted all at once. One of them swings a fist toward Ted. The boy flinches, but then all of the bullies are repelled by the enchantments on Ted's clothes. Ted is confused while the bullies wonder what the hell is going on. Abel, who's just observing quietly, notes that the physical reflection enchantment he had cast on the clothes worked without any problem. Loudly cursing, the bullies decide to retreat, dragging along their fallen friend. Abel thinks the so-called elite students can't even recognize such a simple enchantment. Meanwhile, Ted is convinced that it was he who caused the opponents to be blown away. Abel is exasperated as he cast the enchantments in front of Ted just a while ago. However, Eliza is shocked, having sensed the enchantments on Ted's uniform. She exclaims that it's the first time she's seen such elaborate enchantments. Abel isn't surprised at all that a descendant of Maria would realize that. When she asks Ted where he got the enchanter for his uniform, Abel tries to silently convey that they shouldn't tell her it was him. Ted nods, totally misunderstands, and reveals to Eliza that it was Abel's work. Abel quickly drags him away while Eliza processes the information. Recalling all of Abel's other abilities, once again, it makes Eliza wonder who he really is. Outside, Ted thanks Abel for the enchantments on his clothes. As thanks, he hands Abel one of the snowball steamed buns, assuring his mentor that this one didn't fall on the floor. Abel takes a bite and comments that the taste is just average. Ted feels bad, but then Abel suggests that Ted should put enchantments on the wrapping paper to make it cold, as after all, it's a snowball steamed bun. Ted is excited by the idea, but Abel refuses to do the enchantments. When his mentor suggests that Ted should do it himself, the boy promises to do his best. Abel sighs fondly, noting that Ted has the right spirit. When the boy questions why Eliza was on the 4th floor, Abel answers that he doesn't know. Meanwhile, Eliza realizes she failed to ask Abel to check out the dormitory with her. The next day, Abel and Ted are running through the hallway, with the latter exclaiming that they're late. Abel tells him to calm down as they still have some time left. Ted is frustrated because he slept late last night, worried about yesterday's incident. He wonders if the bullies told the teachers on them, but Abel assures him there's no way those guys will admit they lost. While Ted resolves to apologize the next time he sees them, Abel notices that the door they're about to open has a built-in magic source. He knows that if he opens the doors, what happens next will garner him a lot of attention, so he tells Ted to walk in front of him right after he opens the doors, making the boy curious. The moment Abel grabs the handles of the door, music starts to blare throughout the room. Animatronics start to play their instruments as the doors swing open to reveal Ted. Trumpets sound while he and Abel make their way inside. When Ted questions what's going on, Abel answers it's just simple grant magic. The mechanisms move in response to the magic of the person who opened the doors. A person chuckles, pleased that he was able to hear the music piece called Knight's March that year, and he informs everyone that it's been 20 years since it was last played. He introduces himself as the headmaster, Michael, before congratulating the first years on their enrollment. Ted whispers to Abel that the headmaster is actually a descendant of the hero of Wind, Roa. It piques the Reincarnator's interest, and he recalls for a moment his past teammate. As headmaster Michael finishes his speech, he calls on Lilith to step forward. The demon introduces herself to everyone, immediately charming all of the students. She catches sight of Abel, and after their eyes meet, she gives him a beautiful smile. Abel internally groans while Ted is amused at Lilith's instant popularity. Suddenly, Abel senses something. He glances behind him only to see nothing out of place. He wonders if what he is sensing is a regalia. Since he doesn't sense any immediate threat, he tells a curious Ted that nothing is wrong. Later in class, Ted feels uncomfortable, sensing that they are being isolated, judging by where his and Abel's seats are. Additionally, he can feel the gazes of the bullies upon them. Eliza takes a seat beside Abel, stating that it's understandable since they are the only outsiders in that class. Abel stares at her, and when he asks why she's sitting next to him, she becomes very flustered. Just then, their homeroom teacher appears and introduces himself as Emerson. Abel is instantly alert, sensing the man is quite capable for a magician of that era. When the other students are making a fuss about their teacher, he asks Ted if the guy is famous. The boy answers that he is. Emerson is a master in modern magic and is known to be the strongest magician of their era. Ted reveals it was Emerson who came up with the question regarding Deperonic's final theorem during the exam. Abel narrows his eyes, sensing a strange feeling coming from the man. Unbeknownst to him, Emerson is also keeping a close eye on Abel. Somebody raises their hand, asking why Emerson is suddenly taking charge of their class when he's quite busy with his research. The question intrigues Abel, and he listens as the man answers that he's only teaching because it makes it easier to get research funds from the kingdom this way. The students gape at his honesty, and he reveals further that he took charge of their class because there is something he wants to confirm. His eyes then focus on Abel. Suddenly, he moves to leave, announcing the end of their homeroom period. Ted is surprised, as students are supposed to introduce themselves to the class during homeroom. Meanwhile, Eliza comments that the teacher is quite strange. Later, Abel is about to return to his dormitory when he encounters Lilith. When she asks where Ted is, he reveals the boy is working hard to make friends. After glancing around their surroundings, Lilith then asks if she can kiss him, finding him quite adorable in his uniform. She teases him about forbidden love between teachers and students, but Abel tells her to be careful as they are in school. Just then, something catches his attention. He activates his magic and sends an ice needle at something hovering in the sky. He successfully hits it and tells Lilith that it's some type of regalia. He shares that it's probably Emerson's work, as the man is keeping a close eye on him. She volunteers to investigate him, but Abel tells her not to bother. He instructs Lilith to be more careful of her actions from then on. In a different location inside the academy, Emerson is amused that Abel was able to spot his regalia. He intends to make the next one smaller and improve it so he can record audio. He's excited as he has finally met a magician better than him. While the teacher conducts his lesson in front of the classroom, Abel reflects that it's been a few days since his school life began. Unfortunately, the current teacher's class is as boring as ever. Students would normally scramble to take down notes as the teacher would immediately erase the blackboard, announcing that what they just discussed will be on the test. While Ted can hardly keep up, Abel reflects that the class isn't challenging, and besides, there's an easier way to solve the problem by using an existing shortened formula. Grimly, Abel wonders if this is the kind of lesson he'll be having for the next 5 years. The lessons have been a total waste of his time, so lately he's been researching magic on his own. Suddenly, the teacher's eyes glint, and he calls Abel to solve the problem written on the board. Abel is unfazed, though he notes that until now, nothing like this has happened before in class. While the teacher is smirking at him, Abel thinks the teacher is quite simple for trying to use him to set an example. After quickly solving the problem, the professor is stunned as he confirms that Abel's answer is correct. Ted compliments him before Abel hears some girls talking about how he's so calm and collected. Abel simply ignores them, not noticing that someone is looking at him, feeling quite upset at how nonchalant he is all the time. Later, Abel finds himself in the library, engrossed in his research. The quiet atmosphere is perfect for focusing, and among the Academy's 5 libraries, he's developed a fondness for one of the smaller, lesser-known ones. Appreciating the smell of books and the light during golden hour, he muses that this kind of studying environment is not bad at all. Unexpectedly, Eliza appears, looking quite surprised. Abel looks at her as she goes on to say that it's quite a coincidence that he's studying in that library too. He doesn't believe it, as no one but him would prefer being in that place, and since it's Eliza, there's no chance that anything could be a coincidence with her. Minutes later, the girl is focused on her studies while he concentrates on his research. As her pen stops moving, Abel glances at Eliza, who is seemingly stuck on a problem. He decides to help her and mentions that she needs 2 formulas to solve it. After guiding her through the solution, she arrives at the right answer, making her ecstatic. Abel appreciates her adaptability and insight, which is 100 times better than Ted's. Minutes pass, and soon the sun is setting. As the two make their way out of the library, Eliza addresses Abel, thanking him for today. When he asks her what she's thanking him for, she replies it was for helping her study, to which he then says it's nothing. Shyly, she then asks if he would like to go with her to the royal capital, as she wants to thank him for teaching her. When he gets the impression that the trip will be all about food, she then tells him that they could also visit used bookstores, where they might chance upon a rare book. This catches Abel's interest, and he agrees to come with Eliza to the capital. As Eliza chatters excitedly about restaurants, Abel's attention shifts to a group of boys approaching them. It's the group of bullies, and right in the center is someone that both of them recognize. Abel recalls that the guy is the one Ted had headbutted, much to the bully's embarrassment. Abel then asks what they want from him. The bully responds that it's annoying that outsider students like them are forgetting their place. The group starts to mock and taunt Abel, but he simply doesn't react. They declare that they're going to hold another entrance exam for outsider students like them. Like a gust of wind, Abel slips through the bullies, and the boys suddenly find themselves devoid of any weapons. Eliza is shocked as Abel throws all of their regalias on the ground. He then asks them if they were hoping to take care of him with such flimsy toys. While the leader of the bullies looks dumbfounded, Abel observes that his regalia has been locked so that no additional source can be applied. He then comments to its owner that his regalia is in bad shape. When the bully asks what he means, Abel points out the blade's scratches and cracks and advises the bully to take proper care of his weapon. After tossing the regalia back to its owner, Abel muses that the guy will probably not become an excellent magician if he's so dependent on his regalia. He then grabs Eliza's shoulder, saying that they should go. The girl blushes at the fact that Abel's hand is on her. As they walk away, the bully is left feeling even angrier and resolves to take vengeance and humiliate Abel in tomorrow's class. The next day, Abel's class is having PE, and Ted is visibly excited. In contrast, Abel is as expressionless as ever. When the teacher arrives, they all turn to see a lumbering man carrying a box. He introduces himself as Cantor, the PE instructor. It's quickly apparent that he and the prep school students are familiar and quite friendly with each other. Hearing them talk about Cantor's dating life causes Abel to doubt that the man is a good teacher. Immediately, Eliza expresses her unhappiness that Cantor is only talking to the prep school students. Ted echoes her sentiment, stating that he can feel the favoritism toward the prep school students not only during this class but others too. Finally, the teacher announces that for that day, they'll be playing Hunt, a game which the prep school students are already quite familiar with. Ted turns toward his mentor, but Abel doesn't know about that game either. Cantor states that they'll be using a glove regalia during the hunt, but then his explanation gets derailed when the prep school students tell him they know all about the rules already. When Cantor playfully says that he still needs to explain the rules, the prep school students say he must be doing it for the sake of outsider students. Their mocking voices make Eliza mad to the point that she swears to dispatch all of them right then and there. As Ted becomes nervous at seeing Eliza's angry face, the coach explains that there will be 2 teams. The attackers are called shooters while the defenders are rabbits. The shooters will try to hit the rabbits while the latter tries to avoid the shooters' bullets. After 5 minutes, the offense and defense will switch, and the team with the most rabbits in the end will win. Cantor then points to a box where the shooter's gloves are, but he also permits students to use their own. There are 3 types of bullets. First, a spear-shaped bullet specializing in speed. second, the balance sphere, and third, the disc, which can change trajectory. One of the girls becomes nervous as the game looks dangerous, but Cantor assures her that none of the bullets can cause any bodily harm because they're all low-powered without a magical attribute. He then raises his gloved hand toward Ted and demonstrates by shooting a bullet at him. The teacher then informs everyone that the bullet will generate a shockwave that will cause the target to fall over. Ted is upset and states that he understands how Eliza feels now. Cantor proceeds to tell them that rewriting the shock glove's magic source is forbidden, which Abel thinks is quite unfortunate. Teams are then made, and one of the girls in D team is concerned as all of them are what the bullies consider outsider students. Other members of the D team agree with her concern as well. One of the bullies then approaches Abel, telling him that he'll make him pay back for yesterday. Abel doesn't say anything back, but now understands that the prep school students and the PE teacher are accomplices. While Abel is confident that he's not going to lose to them, he observes that the other members of his team are nervous. They talk about how they aren't athletic at all and are only good at using their heads. Abel muses that being smart is great, but a magician's main asset is his body. Glancing to his side, at least there's one person who's quite enthusiastic through it all, Eliza. The girl from earlier expresses her concern, saying that it seems the prep school students have nefarious intentions, judging by how a couple of them are sending them evil grins. While Eliza believes that the bullies won't do anything too bad, Abel doesn't quite agree with her, as it's likely the bullies are planning something. With her enthusiastic spirit, she then rallies her team. Cantor then says that they'll be deciding who will be on the offense first. He flips a coin, and when it lands on his arm, the representatives of each team choose a side. Cantor announces that C team will be taking the offense first. He then has all 7 members of D team come into the court, while only 3 of the C team will get to be shooters. He raises his arm and announces the start of the game. The bullies don't waste time and immediately start shooting bullets toward the other team. Abel merely dodges, finding even the spear bullet to be quite slow. While he's thinking that it's easy to dodge the bullets, he observes that the others are having a hard time. At the moment, Ted barely manages to evade the bullets. Abel continues to muse that this game helps one determine if they have a blind spot. When he notices a spear bullet heading his way, he thinks that it's a foolishly honest frontal attack. He dodges while a teammate ducks to evade it. The bullet whizzes away before turning around and hitting the guy squarely on his back. Abel is caught off guard, not expecting that the bullet will change its trajectory. Soon he hears shouts as 2 more members of his team are hit. They look confused as they could have sworn they managed to evade the bullets. Abel's suspicions solidify. Something isn't right. As the bullies from C team celebrate, thinking they're down to 4 members on Abel's side, he pieces it together. Team C is cheating. As the 3 hit students leave the court, Abel overhears them still puzzling over how they dodged the bullets but got hit anyway. Deep in thought, he tries to figure out what caused the bullets to change direction. He soon suspects the bullets must have a secondary magic source enabling target tracking. Glancing at the bully leader, Abel zeroes in on his glove, likely the source of the trickery. Eliza decides to confront their opponents and states that a spear-type bullet wouldn't naturally curve like that. The bully, unfazed, taunts her by asking for proof and cruelly calls her extra thick, leaving her flustered. Abel, however, notices a sudden attack from the side. Thanks to his sharp instincts, he pulls Eliza out of harm's way just in time. Momentarily confused, Eliza quickly realizes what happened as Abel explains the sneak attack. He warns her to stay focused. She calls his name and with a blush, thanks him for saving her, catching Abel off guard with her unexpected honesty. While other students cheer for their respective teams, Abel reflects that it's been about a minute since the game started. He's getting bored as he can only evade. The girl from earlier, whose name is Yukari, tells Eliza that an attack is coming from behind her and thankfully, Eliza dodges in time. Abel observes that compared to the other girls, Yukari is calmer and has a wider vision. He predicts that if she fixes her pessimistic attitude, she might turn into a promising magician in the future. Then the bullies decide to up their game. 2 of them surround Yukari and attack her from all sides, causing Eliza to become concerned for her friend. When the leader of the bullies sends another bullet toward Yukari, both Abel and Ted are alarmed. The bullies continue to pelt the girl with bullets, their leader claiming they're not doing anything wrong, as they're simply exterminating a poison perch. Angry, Eliza points out that Yukari has already fallen, but the scumbag says there's no rule against attacking fallen rabbits. Suddenly, Eliza gets shot from behind by one of the bullies. Abel sighs, noting her bad habit of becoming emotional even during combat. He muses that the bullies probably kept attacking Yukari as a way to antagonize them. Ted decides to complain to the teacher, but then he too gets hit with a bullet right on the head, which pisses him off. He apologizes to Abel, who's the only one left standing inside the court. The bully laughs, claiming that the outsider students are insignificant after all. Unfortunately for him, Abel resolves to continue evading until the timer runs out. On the sidelines, Ted comments that facing 3 opponents must be tough for Abel, but Eliza tells him that's not true, as Abel hasn't moved a step from his current position. A look at Abel confirms what she's saying, which baffles Ted. As beginners often repeat their attacks, Abel has no trouble predicting where the bullets will come from. The bully becomes angry and decides to use their usual combination attack. Suddenly, bullets surround Abel, making him think that spell-scattered bullets were also added to their gloves, which is a gross violation of the rules. The bully feels smug, believing their attack is inescapable. Abel thinks the contrary, but if he uses his superhuman speed, he'll expose his abilities to many people, so he settles for the next optimal solution. When Abel covers his face, the bullies think he has given up, but as the bullets are about to hit him, they seem to hit an invisible barrier. Seeing that the commoner came out of their attack unscathed, the bullies are confused, wondering what just happened. Abel explains that the magic inside the regalia has overflowed because they contained additional techniques. He reminds everyone that rewriting the source of the gloves is prohibited. Immediately, Candor comes to the bullies' rescue, saying the 5 minutes are up. As the first half of the game ends, Team D survives with 1 rabbit. The bully curses, saying Abel got lucky. Ted immediately congratulates his mentor, while Yukari is awed at how he withstood their attacks. Eliza asks Abel if he casts an anti-magic spell, but he doesn't answer, only saying they need a strategy meeting. As he is the only survivor of their team, if they don't annihilate Team C, they lose. He then tells the rest of Team D that they'll be winning the game.